Record. Recording in progress. So I put together a high Terry's driving. Um Let me hit share screen here. So I put together like a slide presentation here on just the fundamentals of stone medicine. Um and this is drawing. I worked with this amazing woman. Um Oh gosh, I hate to say it these days. It's like I have to say I don't know if she's alive or not, but she was this Haitian Earth mother. I mean, I have never met more of like an Earth mother in my life. It's this woman. And she had been a nurse up in New York City and she moved down here with her husband, but she lived in this little like gated community condo kind of place down garden apartments down south of Miami. And you'd walk in her door and she had like these 3.5 foot tall pillars of like quartz and smoky quartz on either side of her door, like one solid point of a crystal that was 3.5 feet tall. And you just like started vibrating as soon as you walked in her house. I mean, she had these amazing, she was a true like stone keeper, earth medicine keeper. And I did a lot of treatments with her. You'd lay on her treatment table and she had like a biomat that's filled with stones, but then she would have like a whole full stone grid underneath. And Sarah Thomas is very much like this as well. And then she would put stones all over me and have me covered in stones. And we would go actually into the Akashic records and do all of this intense healing work. She helped me a lot when I was going through a huge spiritual awakening and spiritual. I was going through my Buddhist spiritual cleansing. It was almost like kind of like a kundalini thing, but she really helped me a lot. And I learned a lot of stuff about stones from her. She would have people bring her like really amazing quartz crystals and she that had been broken or hurt, and she would help mend them back together. She would like heal the crystals back together, which was like, wow. So some she said they weren't meant to be healed back together, but some just, if it was a certain type of a wound or something, she would help piece it back together. So she was really amazing. Um, so we have been using, I mean, people have been using stones forever and ever and ever as medicine, as healing, as wizards, sorceresses, magicians use stones, healers use stones, herbalists use stones, um, and the shamans use stones. And then we're drawn to them because they emit an energy and they have a consciousness. They actually do have a sentience and a consciousness, and they're record keepers. And part of why they're record keepers is because of the matrices, the lattices within them can hold information. They can hold information. They can also be portals to travel through. I was shown a portal. This just came up recently, like another piece of the puzzle that we was used in Atlantis, and they were like palm stones, but with this, you actually traveled through the lattice work of the stones and could teleport through there. And you can teleport your consciousness through there now. So in the 1980s, we had the whole new age crystal thing was really big because everything was starting to wake up then. A lot of people poo-poo that age now, but we were coming out of the 1960s, the psychedelic era of the 1960s, and then in the 1980s, and people were actually opening up to spirituality in a new way. Tibetan Buddhism didn't make it to the United States until the 1960s, until Chogyam Trungpa. They sent him. They were like, you have to go to the West," and so they sent him to England, to Oxford University, and he started dressing like Westerners and putting on his suits and ties and learning English. But he was bringing Tibetan Buddhism to the West. So that was all happening in the 60s, and then we get in the 80s and a lot more opens up. Now we're goodness, the 1980s were already 40 years ago, believe it or not. And now we're having another psychedelic renaissance and another kind of awakening. But it's interesting as we push to awaken, there's a push back to put us back to sleep as well. So it's that constant. Rudolf Steiner talked a lot about this, and I'm going to be talking more about this. There's the and this came up with my recent Venus retrograde journey. There's forces in the universe, and it's almost like the yin and the yang, the light and the dark forces. And you have the cosmic high angelic forces against the chaotic, more chthonic dark forces. And Rudolf Steiner called these, it was the light beings and the angelic realms on one polarity against the Ahrimanic. He called them Ahriman was one of the, I think it was one of the devils out of the Bible, I'm not sure. But the Ahrimanic dark forces. And actually Rudolf Steiner in the early 1900s predicted that um we were going to be put to sleep like our consciousness was going to be shut down by Ahrimanic forces that were going to become in the form of screens. Now he said this, I think maybe just as the movies were starting, like the talkies. Television was not out there, phones were not out there, and these computer screens were not out there. But he said that the Ahrimanic forces would work through the computer screens to dull people down and lower their consciousness level and prevent them from waking up. And here we are seeing it, in front of us pretty obviously. Um, so, anyways, there's that going on. But amidst all that is our like indigenous people and all of our ancestors lived awakened to all these different realms of beings that are around us all the time. The plants, they talk to the plants. The animals, I mean, before Lakota they would go out on a buffalo hunt, they would say prayers and connect with the buffalo herd, on it was being in relationship with the world around you and connecting to these other realms. And stones are one of those realms. And a lot of these are connected into what we call the etheric and the astral plane. So we have the physical plane where our physical bodies are, which a lot of people just think that's all there is to it. And then we have the etheric realm, which overlays the physical and goes a little bit outwards from the body. So every being, we have like an etheric double living within us. And then from there, we go out into the astral, which is where your consciousness can leave your body. But all of these realms that I'm speaking of all overlap. They're all present right now as we sit here. It's not like we have to go through space to get to one or the other. But we're going to be talking a lot more about that through this year. And these beings in these other realms are literally screaming at us to wake up and calling upon us, because as humans, it is our heart connection to them and our acknowledgement of them and our relationship that we have with them that keeps them alive as well from disappearing. It's just like in Tolkien in The Lord of the Rings, when the elves got on their ships and decided they had to leave. That has been happening the more and more we become this materialistic culture. But there's a big call to start listening to them again. And as we start listening to them just as individuals, we will get more and more information coming from them. And because they love it, they like dearly, dearly love it. So stones are that way as well. So we have in the East, stones were rooted in the ancient alchemical practices of the Taoists. The ancient Taoists were alchemists, very similar to the alchemists of Western Europe. who were trying to change lead into gold. And they were working with the minerals and working with the elements. And the Taoists wanted to well, we'll go into that in a little bit. But then we have like Western science and geology. Like we can analyze the stones from a materialistic point of view, science, and look at what metals are in there, what minerals are in there, the lattice work and everything else. And that gives us a whole nother layer of information. And so stone medicine it's actually like a sibling to herbal medicine. So just like we talk about herbs, stones are made up of these different chemical constituents with different properties. Um, and they're being the most dense of all the earth medicines, they carry the most information and they can carry it encoded. So you can take like a quartz crystal and encode it with a specific message through your intention. Um, so in Taoism, like the ancient Taoists were really, they were looking for like immortality. Now, whether you can call that a actual physical immortality, or like being the first like the functional medicine doctors and everybody wants to live forever, which I don't I'm just going to be brutally honest here. I don't personally want to live forever. I know there is more than just this one lifetime. I know that there's more than just this one lifetime for our animals. I love my animals and I want them to be with me as long as possible, but I don't want them to be suffering to be with me. So, but there's also a spiritual immortality. And the stones being the most dense, when we left the water element last year in our journey around the elements, we talked a lot about Jing and that life essence that's stored deep into the kidneys. That part of it we inherit from our parents as ancestral energy. We also get it cosmically. It's related to the DNA and the RNA and the genetics. Well, stones, they're actually closest to that void point, like, the Jing is in that dark void, the cave of the kidneys, the place of no thing, of pure potential, and stones are the one thing that really can treat the Jing. They can go in and they can treat DNA and RNA issues. There's stones that can treat babies inside the womb that are exposed to toxins and things and can help reorganize that and help them. There's amazing stories of that happening. So, with the Taoists, they did all different kinds of stones. They went to the point of even like imbibing stones and doing these crazy chemistry experiments. The Bon tradition in Tibet does the same thing. They'll have these cookers and put all these stones in there and do all this alchemy where they melt them down and turn them to chalk and do these spagyric extracts of stones. So, and this quartz crystal is just an example of that. Like they just meditating with a stone can just take you right into that void, can take you into that place of emptiness, as the Buddhists say. So there's classifications. There's a lot of different ways to classify them. Every single stone is an individual in and of itself, just like every cat's an individual, every dog's an individual, every human's an individual. So we have like scientific classifications of stones, what their hardness level is, um, what level of the earth they were formed at, whether that's like the sedimentary level, and we'll go into that more, but it's how deep within and how hot and how pressurized it took to form that stone. The chemical composition of the stone, what minerals, the density, and then the crystal lattice system. And then in traditional Chinese medicine, really the five element system with its different colors can tell us a lot about stones. So, like we're in the wood element right now. So, green stones, that's why that green kyanite specifically is one of our allies for the wood element. Amazonite is another good one, but any green stones. And then for earth, we have yellow stones like citrine. Metal, we have the white stones. Um, Water, we have like the blue stones and the black stones, the black tourmaline, lapis, um, azurite. Those are really potent stones to help with the kidney essence. And then for fire, we have all the red stones and the blood movers and things. So they also have stones have an affinity for each of the different channels and meridians as well. And they have temperatures. There's warm stones and cold stones, just like we talk about with herbs or foods. There's different temperatures of stones, and they have tastes. There's salty stones and there's sweet stones. So all of those same classifications work with stones. And then there's other things like the outer form or shape of the stone. There's the geography, like, we're also working with amber, and amber comes from, like, the Baltic Sea area, and there's some stones that come from, like, Western North Carolina, there's some stones that come from Tibet, like Tibetan quartz, so that tells you something as well. And then where they were harvested and how they emerged out of the earth. What fascinates me is there's new stones that are being birthed out of the earth that are literally making their way up to the surface and coming out that we didn't used to have. And and a lot of this happened around, like, 2012, and, like, and a lot of this was, like, the new age thing is they were, like, discovering all these new stones. And then there's the stones coming from outer space, so there's things like moldavite and tektite and, that are actually coming from meteorites from other star planets, which are amazing, and they're super potent stones to work with. And then we have like the origin or birth story of the stone. And also we'll look at the doctrine of signatures. We're going to look at that actually in terms of amber. Like, what does it mean to have these little prehistoric bugs, insects frozen inside the stone? And amber's a stone that actually can trap entities and can trap parasites and can um, trap pathogens inside of it. So that right there tells you a lot. And then there's deeper science. So there's a lot of people into, the geology. We can look at the light and transparency of the stones, the cleavage sites of the stones, what group the stone is. Like, is this a silica? Is it an oxide? Is it a calcite? Different things like that. And then how brittle and malleable the stone is. And then its conductivity. How does it conduct electricity and magnetism? So there's a lot of different things there. So like hardness, there's a Mohs scale of 1 to 10 for hardness. And the softer stones tend to be treat the more superficial layers of the body. So like really soft stones like calcite is really good for skin conditions. It's almost like the bark of the tree kind of thing. It's soft. They're they work faster, and so they're better for acute conditions. Say, like if you have a hot spot on a dog, calcite will get in there, it'll work really fast, and it'll take that heat out. Um, Pearl powders, some of the stones that can actually be powdered, you can use as a powder on skin conditions. Um, for even like bee stings, kennel cough, like these acute syndromes. There is more of a concern about heavy metals in the softer stones, and that's a concern with like any of the stones. So when we talk about making elixirs or taking them internally, there's some stones you never want to do a direct elixir with, but there's lots of ways you can still capture that stone's energy and not have to take it in internally. So lithium is super soft. It's a 1, and lithium is what they treat, schizophrenia with. It's a drug as well, but it calms wind down. It calms the mind down. Calcite is really good to remove heat. Talc is also a 1. And when you pick up talc as a stone, it like falls apart as a powder in your hands. You don't wanna breathe it because that's part of, Johnson& and Johnson's baby powder issue. Um, then the harder stones are from the deeper layers of the earth. They work much slower, but they go deeper into the body. So for more chronic conditions like autoimmune conditions, cancers, things that are at that DNA, RNA level, things that are at the level of the organ or deep in the bone. And it can take months or years to sometimes get out of these chronic diseases, like even Lyme disease. So the hardest quartz is at about a 7, um, but the hardest stones are the sapphires, the emeralds, blue sapphire, topaz, and diamond. Diamond is the hardest stone, and it's fascinating how we have placed monetary value on the hardest stones. So it's just really interesting when we think about that, like diamonds and gold. Gold is a very special, it is actually included in stone medicine, and you can coat stones with gold, like the gold flake that you can get, and it will actually heighten the action of the stone, um, because gold doesn't tarnish. Nothing changes gold. It's so complete in itself that nothing changes it. And diamond is much the same way. And yet we look at those, the poor people in the diamond mines, like the blood diamonds is horrible. Uh, so chemical composition. Chemical composition is actually like going back to our chemistry and periodic table of the elements to look at the properties of the stones and the specific alchemy between the chemicals. So we also look at the organs, body parts, and fluids. What part of the body that the stone resonates with, where it travels to and how it works. So for example, lithium only has 3 electrons. It's the lightest metal, right below, it's like number 3 on the periodic element chart. It's right below hydrogen and helium, right? And hydrogen is just a gas, and helium's like helium balloons that just float away. So it gives you this floaty feeling of transcendence, but it's very ungrounded. But it will treat depression or conditions that go up and then down because it'll float things up. And it also is found to establish a cadence or a rhythm with brain waves. So it'll help the brain waves go into a regular up and down rhythm. And there's lithium quartz, which is very high in lithium, and there's lepidolite, which is another beautiful pale purple stone that's very high in lithium. Um, so that's the chemistry. So then we have like the crystal systems. These are like the lattice work. So there's 7 different crystal systems. There's cubic, there's tetragonal, there's orthorhombic, there's rhombohedral, monoclinic, triclinic, and hexagonal. And this goes into sacred geometry. It's almost like the skeletal system of the crystal making these geometric designs that allow like a portal with spirit for spiritual energies to come through. Um, it's yeah, just trying to describe that into words is kind of difficult, but it will form, it's like the bones of the crystal. And then our TCM classifications, the colors we talked about. You can also use the colors to shift the emotional body, using the colors to go to the particular organs of that element. So what organ or meridian it has an affinity to, the temperature, like colder stones work slower, warmer stones work faster. The temperature of the stone is assessed via time, like how long it took the stone to be formed. And then if we look at stones all together compared to other earth medicines like plants, they're all on the colder end of the spectrum. They're all cold relative to other medicines or other like plants or herbs or trees or food, but within them themselves, some are colder and some are warmer. And then taste. All stones are salty, so they would belong to the water element, which has this taste of salt relative to other earth medicines. But then again, they have some are salty, some are more spicy, some are sweet, some are bitter, some are sour. So we have salty for the water element, spicy for the fire element, sweet for earth, bitter to clear heat, and sour. Actually, bitters for um, fire, and spicy's releasing for metal. Yeah, Liz, go ahead and ask your question.
Let me know if you prefer questions at the end. I don't want to interrupt your flow.
Yeah, no, go ahead. That's fine.
Oh, okay. So um with purple stones, I'm curious as a
Mm,
combination of like sort of the red and blue black. Can we think of them as like working that water fire, that vertical heart kidney axis of
yep,
in Chinese medicine, that kind of heart kidney disconnect that can happen with insomnia, anxiety, or just a break where yin and yang are starting to separate? Do you think of purple as really a kind of anchor of like reconnecting and recommunicating heart kidney, our water?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because the heart is red and the
Yeah.
kidneys are blue,
Yeah.
and then we get purple. And that heart kidney axis is so important.
Okay.
And what was I just reading? Oh, I've been so much information has been flowing into me. In Egypt, the purple was considered like it was considered a very high color, like a color of the royals, but other also a color, spiritual color. And that's true of a lot of different other cultures and stuff. So purple is like it's like the purple flame. It's a really high vibe, but it's that, again, that heart and kidney coming together, and you bring those two together, and it's major alchemy. It's big time alchemy.
Great. Great. Yeah. Thanks.
Um, So light and transparency, like how transparent the crystal are. Now, gem quality stones, these are the ones that are perfectly transparent. They don't have any little things inside of them, and they're clear. So they talk about the more transparent or clear, the more it works more on the spiritual end of the spectrum versus the physical end. So with greater transparency is greater clarity and greater awareness and greater divinity. It's almost like the dissolution of the ego, or as the lotus grows out of the mud and we clarify and polish our awareness, it gets clearer. And then the more opaque the stone, the more it works on the material and physical levels. Can also greater opacity can indicate like a guardianship, and sometimes we need that. I mean, there's something we are living on planet earth, and we need to be grounded, and we need to balance between that part of the polarity again. And so sometimes there's a lot of potency to be found in like stones that you just find up in the mountains that are a conglomerate. They might have quartz in them, they might have granite, and stones that haven't been polished at all, that still might even have some of the earth that they were born out of attached to them. That's a whole medicine in and of itself. So you don't have to have the most expensive, crazy looking stone. Um, and then harvesting and the birth story of the stone. So where and when did the stone emerge out of the ground? Did it naturally emerge, or was it mined? And who was mining it? Sarah Thomas talks a lot this, because she goes out to the Tucson Gem Show, and she's very careful anymore of who she buys her rocks from, because there's people that are caring and that mine them very intentionally, and there's others that are just like, let's pull as much as we can out of the ground, and then let's go take them and heat them up so their color gets stronger and do all this stuff to them. So it's also, you can think of it as the trauma that the stone endured being birthed out of the ground is part of that stone's destiny and history. And it's also creating its character and its healing ability. And sometimes we can't, sometimes to awaken or to reach other places, we have to go through some trauma, which is that can also be part of the dissolution of the ego of the stone, is going through that roughness to get to another place and have a different perspective. So the doctrine of signatures, this is used in both stones and herbs. And I found this quote from 16. I was trying to look up the origin of it, and it's very difficult to figure out. But my whole take on it is that early on, as people were start looking at plants around them, they were like, "Oh, wow, that looks like that deer lung when I was butchering the deer, or that looks like a piece of the liver, or this looks like, it might look like an organ, it might look like a wound, or something like that," and remind them. So this quote is, "The signatures likewise are taken notice of, they being, as it were, the books out of which the ancients first learned the virtues of herbs. Nature, or rather the God of nature, having stamped on diverse of them legible characters to discover their uses." And so I just thought that was a really cool quote from a man in 1657 talking about like nature stamping what they were good for onto the actual substance. And it's a direct way of observing earth medicine and learning what it might be used for. And even sometimes the shape of a stone, like I have a specific piece of rose quartz, but when I picked it up, my each of my fingers just wrapped around it. It was like my handprint was already imprinted in it. And so I use it as a meditation stone. Um, you also get direct gnosis of the stone or plant by really observing it and seeing what it reminds you of. So, like mica, for example, there's these thin layers stacked, layer upon layer, almost like the pages of a book. And you can peel them off one by one. And when we're dealing with healing, oftentimes healers will talk about peeling off the layers of an onion. Like you have to start somewhere, but as you keep going, you keep peeling off deeper and deeper levels, and it kind of never ends. Can also be like peeling off layers that of protection and defensiveness we've built up around our hearts. And so mica is good for all of that. It's good for taking away some of those defensive mechanisms and opening up the heart and peeling away those layers. And I've linked an article in the research section by Matthew Wood. He did a really cool article on the doctrine of signatures. Um, he's come back around his book on shamanic herbalism, and I was really privileged to hang out with him and his Native American friend Teasel, along with a holistic vet. I mean, it was like those three guys just hung. They were just like best buddies, and I was able to hang out with them quite a bit, all three in one space, and just have the pot of coffee going and just talking around the kitchen table. And there's so much that came out of that. Um, so he got messed up in the whole Me Too thing with that. They were saying that he was using Native American whatever, but they were like best friends. Matthew Wood was like a freaking brother with Teasel, and um, so anyways, but a lot of his stuff is probably going to be coming through this year through my program. So we have three levels of energetic formation. We have and this is like how the earth is formed. So deep in the earth, we have the core of the earth, the source. It's like some people say that there's a big giant piece of iron there or piece of garnet, that there's a big red dragon that lives there that is the source of like our blood. It's igneous, it's magma. And this is where those hardest stones are formed, the sapphires and the diamonds. It's also has to do with our bones and our genetics, chronic conditions, things that just feel permanent, like I'm stuck with this and I'm just going to have to carry it for the rest of my life, like some kind of congenital condition that you have that you think is never going to move, and things can move, they can move. um so stones, again, they're the most permanent of the earth medicines, so they're the ones to turn to on some of these really, really tough issues. And then we have the yin, which is the middle level, which is the metamorphic. And these are the medium density stones. So like quartz at 7, fluorite. These have to do with our organs, our muscles, sinews, fluids in the body, subacute conditions, like maybe digestive problems, energy problems. Um, and the supplements like plants and mushrooms and stuff also fit into this level, feeding with and diet. And then we have the superficial levels of the body where the Wei Qi level of the body is that immune system, the surface, the skin, the bark, and this is a sedimentary level. So we have those soft stones, the calcite, talc, lithium, sandstone is very soft. And these are for acute problems with, they have a fast onset, but a fast resolution. And like the air, and even metal element, the lungs, the skin, mucosa, nails, fur. And for these, I put the flowers because the flower essences are very good for these types of things, where the emotional body, it's like that etheric layer and auric layer of the body where the emotional body is, and to lighten up, as well as the mushrooms and herbs. And so this comes from, this is actually a slide Sarah let me use from Temple of Stone, but she says Gahong was one of the earliest Taoists, who's the father of Chinese stone medicine. And he said, whenever you cannot find an answer, you will always find it deeper in the earth. Um, so a lot of the conditions, it's almost like Lyme disease, or again, things that last a long time, they're the toughest to treat. They'll feel scary to have because again, you feel like you're stuck with it, like it's never going to go away. That it may have been passed down from ancestors or from relatives. We see it all the time in animals and dogs and breeding problems, like hip dysplasia and these things that dogs are born with. I mean, it's almost weird. What I find weird is almost like anxiety is becoming like that, but it's not. But people are making it like that. Like trauma, but trauma we should be able to work through and not stay stuck in it, looping over and over again. Um, so again, we have like the bones, bone marrow, teeth issues. That's a huge issue in a lot of breeds of dogs. Kidneys, spine and brain problems, seizures, um, autoimmune, like the one deep level. There's the heavy metals. We talk about those all the time. Congenital issues, mental illness, neurological, adrenal fatigue, genetic mutations, trauma, PTSD is listed there. And it's also having to do with soul and spirit connections. So the subconscious, or the repression and suppression of symptoms, where we just give things to keep the symptoms locked up in the closet and turn to drugs. Um, Programs, beliefs, genetic issues, karmic issues, and I see those in animals too. It's like I swear I have one little dog who just keeps getting head injury after head injury, and I feel like it's just karma. It's like a samskara, conditioning, dreams, and then we go even other correlations into dreams and synchronicities. Like you're called to be somewhere. Like Liz said, I just saw the thing and I said, oh, I have to be there, I guess. So you're just called to be somewhere to hear to allow the messages to come through. And this also has to do with like our journey and going into a multidimensional space. and to a space where we open ourselves up to like the Akashic records are awakening to certain other messages and ways of getting information coming through that may really help us or may help for those of us who have patients or we have animals we're working on in rescues. We may hear something that comes through in a dream and you wake up and you're like, wow, that stone was in my dream. And then the picture of the animal will pop into your head. And so those are the things to listen to because you never know that that could be directly for that animal. So, um, so methods of using them, we can place stones on the body. We can carry stones next to the skin. I've had clients put stones, they have these cool little wire baskets that you can put stones in that you can attach on their collars. So your dog can wear the stones around just like we can wear stones as bracelets, as necklaces. A lot of people put stones in their bras. As I'm walking out the door, sometimes I'll turn around and a stone will grab my attention and I'll just grab it and put it in my pocket for the day. I also have little stone medicine bags that if I'm working on a specific issue, I'll put a 2 or 3 stones in there, like a little miniature stone grid I carry in my pocket. And then elixirs is where we can take, because water records energy, we can make elixirs and record that stone energy into the water and take that. And I'm gonna teach you how to do that. And then also for land healing, for gridding out areas, you could grid out a dog's bed. You could grid out their crate. Say a dog spends a lot of time in their crate or something, and you're dealing with maybe anxiety, grid their crate. And you have to be careful they're not going to get stones and eat them and swallow them, but you could put them on the outside too. There's different things you can do. You can grid out the whole house and land. If I move into a new place, I walk my perimeter and do all kinds of things on the perimeter. And then I have grids around my doors and entries and exits. And then you can do radionics with distance healing. And I'm going to talk about how to do this as well, where you can take a map of the body just drawn out on a piece of paper and take a picture of the animal and put on there and focus on that animal and give them a stone treatment on their body without having to lay the stones on their actual body. So that's another really cool thing to do that can help. Um, and so that's all I have to say. Welcome to the realm of stones. And we're going to be taking off. They're pulling this pulling this out on a grand voyage thanks to Elaine Bolognese, who asked me and wanted to do more stone medicine. So do you guys have any questions or comments? Or we
I
are
used to I used to ask my parents to take me to the stone show when I was 4 years old.
there
4
you
years old.
go.
I wanted to go to a stone show. I love stones. I found something at my parents' house. It was written
Oh
on the
wow.
back, it said $1, but this was my very, very, very first stone I ever wanted. And I
Oh
got
my
this when I
goodness.
was 4 years old for $1. It
Heck
still
yeah,
it
cool.
still has dirt on it, and it sits on my desk. And there was
Wow.
something about like the crystals and the colors and the way it was. I have a thing for stones. I don't know that much about them, which is why I'm super excited about all this. I've been slowly collecting more stones since I've been in my class or whatever. But I did an experiential horse healing in North Carolina
Mm,
about 5 years ago, and which was nothing short of amazing for me either. And we had to go walking through the forest, find a stone that talked to us. And
oh,
I
cool.
I was looking down and I picked up some stones or whatever, but I too picked up a piece of raw quartz that fit into my hand. And when you said that, Josie, it
Wow.
I carry that with me because it feels like somebody is holding my hand when I'm holding it.
Right.
And I
It is. They
found it
are.
in the middle of a forest while I was
Wow.
on this experiential horse retreat,
Wow.
which
Wow.
was
Well, horses are just magic. I mean, that's why we didn't go into equine veterinary medicine because I just can't. Like, they're just magic to me. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's so cool. That stone, it looks like an agate. It looks almost like a portal, though. It looks like a
no,
doorway into another world.
it is it in something about I think I was 4 or 5 years old. I used to plead with my
Wow.
parents to take me to the stone show. It's one of the places I wanted to go. I don't know why, but I've had it. I mean, 60
Wow.
plus years, right? It's pretty
Wow.
cool.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah. All right. So yeah, so we can, I mean, you can, if you have stones available, as we go through each of the elements, you can get the stones, but also look for what comes up to you naturally like that. If you're out somewhere and you see a stone or something, that's really what's calling you for your own individual medicine. Because we're gonna talk about medicine and do things as a collective, but then I want you guys to be open to finding your own things. Uh-huh.
When when you harvest a stone or when a stone calls to you, how do you have any language or thoughts around rituals for just consent in terms of asking the stone if it feels okay to be moved or removed from its
Well, you ask it. You
yeah.
can always ask it. I mean, I do it so much on a feeling level because all this communication is really happening through the heart.
Yeah.
So it's almost like if I see it, I'll feel the stone like reach out to grab me, and
Mhm.
then I respond back to it. But I do ask it. Like sometimes they'll be like, "But am I supposed to leave you right where you are and
Right.
just have this interaction with you right here?" Or
Yeah.
do you want to come along with me? And you can ask that on the inner. You can also leave. A lot of times I'll leave offerings, and sometimes it will be, some people, it depends upon where I am and what I'm doing, but, if I'm going out on a long herb walk and I think I'm gonna be finding a whole bunch of stuff, I will take a small pouch of tobacco with me, because that's just part of the tradition I grew up with, is leaving a pinch of tobacco behind where you are. If you're out and I don't have anything at all, one thing that people, and I learned this from another herbalist, is take a strand of your hair, just pull out a small strand of your hair and just leave it behind for the fairies or the elementals. Just as a token, it's more as an intention of giving back instead of just always taking. Because
Yeah.
we grow our our society is just so much about taking, 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 taking. So I always sure I make go giving something back. And then sometimes if I end up taking it and using it and using it in my healing or something like that, then I feel like I'm giving a portal for that stone's medicine to come out into the world as well, or maybe that stone, I've had stones leave and disappear on me and then show back up. They like I swear they travel interdimensionally because I will have stone, I'll be like, "Where is that one stone?" And then I had one like disappear for like 5 years and then show back up, and I'm like, "There's no way So, they come and they move around even though they can't they do move around. Um,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, I'm always concerned about what role is it already playing in its local ecosystem
Yeah,
as a medicine
yeah,
giver and just as a
yeah.
participant in its own community so that and just in our sort of extractivist culture, I feel like, yeah, I
No, exactly.
call to the stone shows and I never know kind of who's harvesting thoughtfully, mindfully, and who's there just, just to make money from beautiful things. And so it feels, I'm
Yeah.
grateful for the intentionality and the respect around that.
Yeah, that's why, like, I put up, well, Clarity Stone Medicine, they have a good shop because Sarah goes and just gets some really, and I believe it's in the resource section on this site, but she, is very careful about what she gets and who she gets them from. Um, but yeah, and that's probably why I haven't gone to a big stone show either. I just thought of that because sometimes you go in there and it's just like, oh, these poor rocks. They're just like stacked up in these things in these boxes. It's like going to a breeder's show, or going to a humane society, or a pet dot puppy store in some ways, you know? Like, what are we really doing warehousing all this stuff? So, and then there's ways you can take, I'll put up a practice that I got from Sarah, where you take all of your stones out and just kind of cleanse them and have them come back in community, and you can figure out who's who and what's going on. There are these Taoist stone circles that you can make with them too. So I'll put that up, which is good to do. I mean, I have different stones in different areas, but I feel like some of them are like, okay, we need to get moved around and worked with a little bit. All right. Any other shares? So, oh, and so for wood element, were you working with the green kyanite? Because I sent out everybody that was in the program last year. I had made a whole stone mandala, and they got a piece of green kyanite. But you can also, you don't necessarily have to have the physical stone. You can go into meditation and you can call on that energy of that stone to come through to you. So we're going to be working with green kyanite and with amber. So, that's going to be coming up on Tuesday. So we're going to go over those allies. See what they have to say to us. All right. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining me here on a Sunday afternoon.
Thank
It's
you.
good to see
Thanks
you
so much,
all.
See you guys.
Josie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's
Take care.
really appreciate it.